going on, guys? Good morning. Welcome back to United View. Hope everyone is doing very well. Welcome back to another edition of the Transfer View. 2 days remain, actually under 2 days remain of the transfer window right now. Today and tomorrow, and then the transfer window slams shut for Manchester United. And oh my goodness me, there's a bit of business left to do. We are going to be talking about Sophie and Amrabat this morning because who do you believe? That's the question. Who do you believe? What do you believe? Do you have the hopium? Do you latch onto the copium? Are you frustrated? Are you angry? It's a myriad of emotions right now when it comes to Manchester United's pursuit of the Moroccan midfielder. We're going to get into the latest news surrounding him. After yesterday it was reported that we were working on a bid or working on signing him. Then it was reported that we had made a loan bid. Then details came out of the loan bid, and it was Fiorentina rejected that loan bid because it was terrible. And then late last night it's, no, there was no loan bid. We're preparing a formal bid today. Who knows? We're going to go through it this morning. Everything we possibly can. Scott McTominay is well. We're going to be chatting about him because seemingly he's going to be staying, so no funds are going to be raised from McTominay going to Bayern Munich. Rasmus Hojlund. There is a bit of interesting information surrounding him and him possibly making his Manchester United debut this Sunday against Arsenal, with reports that he has been training, and then other reports that Manchester United aren't telling anyone if the Danish international has been training as well. So we'll speak about that. Plus the Champions League draw is coming up later today. This evening, actually. It's like 5 o'clock it takes place. So we'll have a little look through as to who we could possibly be drawn against. What could our possible group of death be? Of course, we'll go into it in a lot more detail later on today, but it's good to, it's fun to predict and try and look forward to suggest who could we face off against, and we'll chat a little bit about the Carabao Cup as well, because we've been drawn once again in a home tie. Something like our 13th consecutive home tie. Something ridiculous like that. So how are we all doing, though? Be sure to smash a like on the like button. Be sure to subscribe, bottom right hand corner. How you feeling about the transfer window? You feeling nervous? Are you feeling just run down? Are you tired? I've had a lot of people saying to me, "Oh, and I'm tired. I'm just tired." And I say, "Yeah, preach. I'm tired too." Are you confident that we're going to bring people in? Are you not confident we're not going to bring people in? Cucurella seemingly looks like that one's going to get done, but he played last night in the Carabao Cup for Chelsea. What does that mean? I mean, obviously the sirens have to go off very, very early. So, you know, as we always say, it's criminal. How are you feeling? And let me know where you're watching from as well in the chat too. Amanor says, where is Tier 1 Scout KG on this important day? KG, he's not in the country. He will be back for the game against Arsenal at the weekend, but KG is still not in the country. He's on assignment. Can't say too much. I mean, he's not telling anyone much about it, but can't say too much about it. Yeah. So he's not here. He's not in the country. He's away. He's working, which is where KG that comedian is, and he's completely different to KG Scout. I don't know where Tier 1 Scout KG is, and I don't even know why we call him Tier 1 Scout KG, because they're different people. It's the Scout, and then there's KG the comedian. Very different people. Different identities. People get confused by that sometimes. KG out of the country. The Scout, I don't know. I don't know where the Scout is at the moment as well. Pete says, so Cucurella is cup tied. I don't know what the rules are for the Carabao Cup. I would assume so. If he's played in it for one team, I would assume he's cup tied. I don't know how it works, really, to be honest with you. I'm not sure. Yusuf's watching from Istanbul. Big up. We're going to be signing, obviously, a Turkish goalkeeper. Probably today. That announcement most likely is going to be coming today from the signing from Fenerbahce. So keep your eyes peeled for that one as well. But let's get into Sophie and Amrabat. We've got news about him this morning, because it was reported last night by Fabrizio Romano. I should do the timeline, actually. I should do the timeline of things, because who do you believe when it comes to this, right? I'll do the Romano first news, and then we'll sort of try and put all of the pieces in together. So, Fabrizio Romano said that Manchester United are preparing a formal bid for Sofian Amrabat. He has always been a top target. No loan proposal was sent to Fiorentina, just informal talks. Fiorentina could be open to a loan, but with an obligation to buy based on conditions. Sofian has been waiting for Manchester United since June. So I went, wait a minute. When I was reading this, when I was reading this last night, I went, wait. So you've got all of the different people saying different things at this point. Let's take a step back. So you've got Samuel Lucas from the Manchester Evening News saying that for the longest time, it doesn't look that likely. It sort of reports that I've got suggest that it's been more built up from journalists and sources in Italy. They're the ones that are really pushing this. When I spoke to someone on the preseason tour, they kind of scrunched their face to imply that it wasn't that likely. Now, granted, when the news came out yesterday about Amrabat or United, pursuing Amrabat, he said that United had, after lots of consideration, they were going after him. But for the longest time, you've got the MEN saying, no, I think that's more based in Italy. You've then got Ornstein that comes out yesterday. Well, actually, you've got Romano initially saying, nope, Sofian Amrabat, United's top priorities, top target. He's been the top target all summer. He's waiting. He's been waiting all summer. That's the move he wants. That's the move he wants. That's the move he wants. Alfredo Padula, also Italian journalist, he's been saying the same thing. That's the one he wants. That's the one he wants. He's separated himself. He's going for that. United, they've got to sell some players, but they're going after Amrabat. You're going after Amrabat. Then it goes quiet. Then yesterday, you get Ornstein come out and say that United were working, they were working on putting together something to try and sign Sofian Amrabat. They were working to do this deal. So Ornstein says that. The Romano comes out and says, see, like told you, they're working on it. Then it was Gianluca Damasio came out yesterday to say, all loan bids sent to Fiorentina have been rejected. They only want to let him go permanently. They might be open with a loan with an obligation to buy. Then you had The Athletic, and this is how tedious this is. Then you had The Athletic come out and say, Man United put in a loan bid of €2 million, €1 million up front. It was such a derisory offer that, of course, Fiorentina rejected it. Talks are still ongoing. And then last night, you have Romano come out and say, no loan bid ever went in. It was just informal talks. So what's going on? What's going on? And the question is, who do you believe at this point? Who do you believe? Because Romano sort of saying, actually, it being like an official loan bid, it was never really an official loan bid. It was just kind of informal talks. Well, what are they going to do when they get formal then? Because if their informal talks was, we'll give you, imagine just chatting informally, Messenger, WhatsApp, voice notes, or just, Zoom calls. What if we did, €1 million up front? This is just informal, by the way. This is just very informal. And well, obviously very informally, we would reject it immediately because that's taking the piss. If that's what you do, well, it's good we're being informal then, because we would never offer that. We would never put that offer in formally. That was informal. So, I mean, look, Romano stayed very consistent with the Amrabat story, really, hasn't he? He stayed very consistent in that Amrabat wants to move. He's always wanted to move. He's separated himself from the squad. He's basically in isolation from the rest of everyone at Fiorentina. He's turned down other moves, whether they be offers from Saudi clubs. It was reported yesterday by Alfredo Padula that Nottingham Forest had agreed a deal with Fiorentina for Amrabat. It was around sort of €20 million, something like that. And Amrabat straight away went, no, not interested. I only want to go to Man United. That's the only place I'm willing to go. Otherwise, I'm going to train by myself for the rest of the year. So I do tend to lean towards what Romano is saying on this one. And maybe part of that is the trap of you're leaning into what you want to hear as opposed to what the reality is. But it's really interesting that you've got two very strong, credible outlets in Romano and The Athletic, and it was two people from The Athletic as well, James Horncastle and Dan Sheldon, were saying the same thing. But Romano sort of saying, well, the key thing there is that it wasn't a formal bid; they were just talks. So maybe it was intermediaries, maybe it was, again, very much informal. Maybe it was just part of these talks that are ongoing. But it does give you hope, and that's kind of what you need, because that was my concern yesterday. My concern yesterday was that sort of bit that it ended on, which was, well, talks are ongoing between United and Fiorentina to see if they can figure something out. And the numbers that they gave were that United had put together this bid of €2 million, but they valued him at €35 million as a permanent transfer, which again to me didn't make a lot of sense, because how can you value him at 35 million euros when it's been reported that you agreed a fee with Nottingham Forest that's around 20. So you don't value him at 35 million euros. And the number is around 20, which is what's been put out there for weeks at this point, hasn't it? That, it's like 25 and then recently they dropped it. They value him around, if you want to put it in pounds, about sort of 17 to 20 million pounds. That's how much they value him at. And United cannot afford that. I mean, yesterday, that was also very much apparent. The business we're trying to do with 48 hours left is very apparent. We don't have the money to do any... I mean, to be honest, in today's market, 17 to 20 million pounds isn't even that much money. I know, we're talking millions of pounds. To you and I, it's a lot of money. But in terms of football, in football terms, as Ty would say, in football terms, that's not a lot of money. For Manchester United, in terms of doing permanent transfers, that's not a lot of money. But we're at the point now, with 2 days left, we're only doing loans. The only permanent signing we're going to do is the backup goalkeeper. That's it. That's the only thing we're going to do. So take out the idea of us signing him for 15, 20 million, because I don't think that's going to happen. It would be a loan with an obligation to buy. My concern was if we were offering 2 million euros and they value him even at around 20, that's a big middle ground to try and figure out in a few days. But if Romano is saying that, look, this formal bid hasn't actually gone in yet, they're preparing it, that gives me a bit more hope that maybe they're having these informal conversations. They kind of go, what would it take to get him on loan? Well, it would be this, obligation to buy. Well, we can offer this with an obligation to buy, and they get there in the end. So the hope is that this one could still get done. And going to bed last night, I felt a bit more confident that it was going to get done. It still doesn't change the fact that with 2 days left of the window, it's just an absolute mess. I mean, pure panic and desperation settings, and I know there are mitigating circumstances and mitigating factors, but I think if you look at just everything that's happened with United over the last couple of weeks, transfer market, performances, obviously, outside of that as well with the Greenwood situation, and just whatever your opinions are on that, just how it was handled. There's the whole thing, how it was handled. It's a mess. And I really do think that John Murtaugh and Richard Arnold, they have a lot of questions to be answered about their performance recently. Whether it be transfers, whether it be handling of other matters, it's just been completely shambolic, really. And there are other clubs and other fans laughing at us for the way that we're operating. And I understand that some of the transfer stuff has been driven by injuries. But the lack of planning, the desperation, the fact that we're in a situation again at the end of the window where we were in January, where we're scraping around for loans and allegedly putting derisory offers in for people, it's really pathetic when you look at it. And I think that here's hoping, who knows if a takeover is going to be done, let alone when a takeover is going to be done. But honestly, they've got no shot of keeping their jobs when whoever comes in, whether it is Sheikh Jassim or even if it was Sir Jim Ratcliffe, because people want to bring in their own people anyway. But they're not doing enough of a job that it's like, I've got to keep them. They're the best in class. And meanwhile, you've got all of our rivals around us. Yeah, they might have some embarrassing moments where they're sort of gazumped by other clubs in the transfer market, but they're not operating the way that we're operating. And the craziest thing too is that earlier on in the window, there was at least a sort of half argument that the trajectory was it might be going towards a half decent window, with the prices and stuff like that. But it's just completely fallen apart. I mean, completely fallen apart, off the edge of a cliff, nosedive, whatever you want to call it. And even if we get in Amrabat and Cucurella, which again this morning, and ask me in a few hours' time because it could dramatically change, but even if we get them in, it's not a good window because it's the way that we've operated, and we still FFP be damned. Put that to one side, FFP, because look how we operated last year. There's really no difference to how we operated last year too. What did we do last year? We panicked. After the season started, we panicked, we overspent, we were desperate, we were scrambling. Now, the finances might be different this time around. We might only be able to do loans instead of spending 100 million euros on Anthony or whoever. But we're still panicking. we're still desperate. And it's the same people in charge that were there 12 months ago. They haven't learnt their lesson. It's still panic and desperation and scrambling around with a few days left. I said this was when I was on Sky a couple of days ago, that it's not a surprise. This is how United operate at this point. So, and then you do look at, it's almost even difficult to compare yourself to Man City in reality, because the way that they're operating in, I mean, we could only dream. I mean, I know people will say, 115 and stuff like that, but it's just they won the treble last year, and they lost players, and big players this summer. Gundogan, Mahrez, etc. Laporte. And they just replace. Gvardiol, Nunes. Who else do you want to bring in? We'll bring the rest of them in, no problem. It's just, it's crazy. And I do have a bit of concern, and I mentioned this yesterday, and I saw someone post it on Twitter, and it's true, X, and it is true, that, you look at FFP, and it's meant to kind of encourage bringing through youth players, isn't it? It's meant to kind of encourage, obviously, not over the top spending, and encourage you to bring players through the academy. And it's almost like the City academy system at this point. They found the way to get around the FFP or play the system a little bit, because they bring players through to sell at massive amounts of money. They just sold another one, 45 million. Goalkeeper to Burnley, was it 20 million? All of these players, even Doyle, that's gone the other way to Wolves, they've got 50% sell-on clause, and it's all pure profit. Plus they cheat as well. So, again, sticking to Amrabat, honestly, I'm feeling more confident today, but it's going to be interesting to see what this formal bid is. And we'll wait and see what the formal bid is, because it's got to really come in today, hasn't it? So we'll keep an eye on that. And, of course, if we get any more information, we'll let you know. We'll go live. I feel like it's going to be a busy 48 hours, certainly. We've got over nearly 1,700 people watching. So if you haven't already, click the like button. Let's get to the super chats here. Aminor's already said that. Where's KG? He's in a undisclosed location. Marcus says, how embarrassing this club is. It's hard being a United fan. Incompetent doesn't even cover it. Fed up and exhausted with these owners. Glazers out. Look back, I think, if you look back on the end of last season, when we were talking about targets and all that kind of stuff, and who we thought we were going to get, Harry Kane, Victor Osimhen, defenders, Kim Min-jae, and what we've kind of ended up with. It's not to say like, oh, Andre Onana's bad, because Andre Onana's a good signing. Mason Mount, for a lot of people, the jury's out, and a lot of people, Mason Mount's got to win people over because they've already made their mind up, which I don't know is completely fair, but okay. Rasmus Hojlund, we genuinely don't know. We don't. We're going to talk about Rasmus Hojlund in a bit, but we'll he could make his debut this weekend, and I've said this quite a few times at this point with Rasmus Hojlund. Even if when he does make his debut, I already feel sorry for him. I already feel sorry for Rasmus Hojlund, because there is so much expectation on him. And look, some of it's justifiably so. You bring a player in, you spend a lot of money, but I mean to the point of we're already looking at him as if to say he's going to be our saviour. He's got to be our saviour. He's got to score goals, because we don't have a striker otherwise. Yes, Martial is back, but at the same time, how long is he going to be back for? I don't know. It's just, it's kind of nuts. It really is. So yes, that's kind of the situation we're in at the moment. Certi says it's completely fair when it comes to Mason Mount. I mean more, and this is what I was saying about Højbjerg the other day, if we signed Højbjerg, is that I think it's fair to be, I tell you what, I don't think this one's going to work out. I don't rate the signing. It wasn't the direction I would go in, and I think that kind of stuff on Mason Mount's fair. I think that's fair to say. I wouldn't have made that sign. I don't think it's right. And in retrospect, when you look at the money spent and sort of what we're trying to do now for Amrabat and looking around for others, you go, hey, it'd have been good to have that £55 million. You could have split it in half and maybe got two. I get that. I understand that. The place where I kind of draw the line with Mason Mount is there is, and people can say that they don't, but they do. You can tell, is that people want him to fail, like to be proved right. I told you. I'd much rather be proved wrong than proved right. and I hope that's the case with Mason Mount. It might not be, and you might be, in 6 months' time or the end of the season, I told you I was right, and you go, yep, you were right. But it's kind of it's the line of almost, again, the wanting to see them fail that I kind of feel a bit uncomfortable about, in all honesty. So yes, that's the latest when it comes to Sofyan Amrabat. Let's move on and talk about Scott McTominay, because we thought maybe McTominay might be leaving. We might get some money for McTominay going to Bayern Munich. Well, that's not happening either, because it's being reported from Germany by Florian Plettenberg. Scott McTominay will not join Bayern Munich in this window. And it does make you wonder, doesn't it, of what is his role going to be then at United this season? Because it's very clear in the opening 3 games that Erik ten Hag doesn't really have that much plans for him. Maybe that will change a little bit now, considering that he's staying. But you get the impression, certainly, that Erik ten Hag had made his mind up that he did not want to keep Scott McTominay this season. And people were saying it yesterday or whenever it was to be owned. Did you see? Should we have United rejected that £30 million bid from West Ham? And I still say hindsight is a wonderful thing when it comes to that. Because at the time, and context is important with this, at the time, when you had, what was that, 3 weeks left of the window, something like that, 2 weeks left of the window, you turn down the opening offer and you negotiate. But Manchester United can't negotiate. Manchester United are terrible at selling. Any other club, they'd get that opening bid in. Put it this way, if this was Man City and West Ham put a bid in for 30 and they went, we want to get 40, they'd get 40, or at the very least they'd get a second bid of a 35, because they'd be like, let's negotiate, let's work this thing out. But it's just nothingness. And also as well is they would talk to McTominay. They would say to McTominay and say, hey, you're going, mate. That's it. You're going. And I still do look at McTominay and say, well, look, he's a homegrown player, academy player, looking at, for instance, City, how they're doing business, Chelsea, how they've done business with their academy players. That's the biggest amount of money you can generate from an FFP point of view this summer. So you're right to turn down the first bid, but also keep it going. Keep it going. Like, keep the discussions ongoing. It's just the quietness. And it does feel like with that one, that there was a disconnect. There's a disconnect between Ten Hag and United, because, for like Gary Neville pointed out when we were playing Spurs away, like that was a game where you would bring on a midfielder, shore up the midfield in the second half, and he didn't want to do that with McTominay. He didn't, and it, as I said, it makes you wonder, what are the plans for him? Even when we get in Amrabat, what are those plans for McTominay this season? I don't know. And if he has a season of playing infrequently, what are you going to get next year? It might be around £30 million, realistically, right? So that's the issue with McTominay. I think when Bayern came in for him, then you started to get quite excited and say, well, Bayern Munich, that you can charge 40, you can charge 45. But by all accounts, and there have been quite a few sort of conflicting reports about this, it must be said, but by all accounts, Thomas Tuchel was kind of the one driving, I want to get McTominay. And realistically, it was kind of sort of the Bayern Munich hierarchy that was saying to Thomas Tuchel, no. No. It's like literally, Thomas Tuchel went up to Bayern Munich hierarchy and went, I'm thinking McTominay. And they went,
tell me he didn't just say that.
They were thinking that. So it looks like McTominay is going to be staying, bar some last minute, miracle bid from West Ham or Bayern Munich. But at that point, what would we do with that money? We need to replace him. That would be typical United. We actually do get a bid. We do sell a player for good money. Can't spend it. we can't spend it until January or something like that. So he's going to be staying. And again, what his role is going to be, I have no idea moving forward, honestly. Dan with the super chat says, not too much pressure on Rasmus. We could have any striker and it would be a graveyard shift until the midfield is sorted and we retain the ball in the final third. Well, I somewhat agree and disagree with that one. What I will say is we create chances. That's kind of the thing. Despite some of the performances that have been so disjointed with United so far in these sort of first 3 games, is you cannot argue that we don't create chances. And we create chances last season too. We just didn't put them in the back of the net. And the hope is that if you have a striker playing on a consistent basis, a actual bona fide number 9 playing on a consistent basis for Manchester United, we will score more goals because we will create more chances. That will be the hope, isn't it? Because last year we didn't really have a striker consistently all season. We had Ronaldo, who left in December. We had Martial, but he didn't complete 90 minutes all the way through the season. So we never had him on a consistent basis. Despite that, though, we created all of these chances. This season, we're one of the top teams for XG or expected assists. I think Bruno Fernandes is top of that chart, and all of those stats that you can point out. So it's not as if we don't create. So again, I would assume that the hope is, and it is hopium. It is that if you've got someone there who has an ability to put the ball in the back of the net on a regular basis, i.e. just having someone that can play the role as a striker, theoretically, we should score more goals. Now, it's not just as simple as that, because I do still think you have to look around to the other players in the front 4 and say, well, you still need to score more goals. We said last season, didn't we? Marcus Rashford really lifted everyone's sort of goal scoring. He carried everyone's goal scoring burden, Marcus Rashford, last year. 30 goals in all comps. And yes, you can look at him and go, right, that's the level for you. But you look at who's playing on the right, Anthony, or whether it is Sancho, or whoever it may be, and go, you need to score more goals. Bruno Fernandes, he mentioned it in pre-season when he spoke to, I think it was KG, after the first game against Arsenal. He said that he wasn't happy with his numbers in front of goal last season. He wants to get more goals. So I think with that, obviously, yes, the midfield absolutely needs to be sorted. There needs to be balance, and it's going to be difficult. But I think the hope is, and again, this is why I sort of worry a little bit for Hojlund, is that just the pressure of, if we get a striker in there, we'll score goals. And sometimes it's not as simple as that, particularly with a striker that's 20 and hasn't played, a ton of senior football, realistically. He's just sort of developing now, played for his country a bit, couple of seasons in Serie A. But that's one thing. Playing as the number 9 for Manchester United, that's another. But if we create chances, then hopefully he'll put them in the back of the net. That's the hope, certainly. But I do think it's more of an issue of just converting, realistically. How many likes are we currently on at the moment? Let's have a look. We have currently got nearly 1,900 people watching, and we are on 253 likes. So if you haven't already, click the like button. See if we can get to 500. Half the way to 500. So if you haven't already, click that like button. Be sure to subscribe as well. Bottom right hand corner. Matafalu with the super chat says, Scott been playing high up, not getting game time. I'm trying to think of a good poll for this morning in the chat. Well, actually, it's going to be a good one. We can move on to Rasmus Hojlund next. So I will put the poll in the chat with, will Rasmus Hojlund, most likely he's going to be involved on Sunday, isn't he? Most likely he's going to be involved. At Show Ramon's done a good one. He says, where will we finish this season? I like that one, actually. Where will United... Well, actually... The best, because the metric is, isn't it, is Champions League. So, will Man United qualify for the Champions League next season? That's the one. Will Man United qualify for the Champions League next season? Poll is in the chat. Now, obviously, when it comes to the Champions League, it's actually the top 5, I believe now, but the 5th is like a wild card or something like that. So theoretically, we're saying, can United get a top 5 finish this season? But poll is in the chat. Interested to know what you guys think about that in comparison to maybe some of the other Premier League clubs, because you do sort of look at the league so far. It's 3 games, difficult to judge, but it's only City with a perfect record. Everyone's dropping points at the moment. And Man United, look, we've lost a game, but we won 2, better than we were this time last season. So, hey, you never know. Speaking of you never know, Rasmus Hojlund. This is quite interesting too, because most likely gonna make his debut on Sunday at the Emirates, right? Well, a bit of conflicting information on this one. So it was reported yesterday by Paul Hurst from The Times that Rasmus Hojlund has trained with his Manchester United teammates this week and is on course to make his debut in Sunday's match against Arsenal. But then it was reported this morning by Samuel Lucas from the Manchester Evening News that Manchester United are refusing to disclose if Rasmus Hojlund trained with the squad yesterday, which is curious. Surely it's got to be mind games, hasn't it? That to me has to be mind games, because he said in the press conference that he trained for the first time with the first team squad, the group collectively, was last Friday. He said that in his press conference. So I'm not sure. They might be trying to play mind games, but everyone knows everyone knows he's training because he trained last week. I think maybe it's a case of, they hadn't released the photos and all that kind of stuff. I mean, technically at the moment he still doesn't have a squad number. That's going to be revealed on Friday, they said, once the window shuts. So, and it's going to be 17. That's going to be his number. But the fact that United are refusing to disclose that, a little bit curious. What do you think that means? Is that just pure mind games? Is that an indication that he could start? I said my prediction, and this is still the same, this hasn't changed, and this is why I thought Martial had to start last week, and I was glad that he did, is because Anthony Martial should start at the Emirates. And you're almost, in essence, building up two strikers at the same time. And that's good, because my goodness me, do we need options in that position. So if you can manage both and have them both to be available as much as possible this season, Martial, who knows, I understand that, but if you can have them be available much as possible, that would be a massive plus for United. I just spoke about how difficult it is for us to score goals and have just a number 9 that's readily available. So I think Martial starts at the Emirates. I mean, how much did he play at Forest? It was 60 minutes on the dot, wasn't it? 60 minutes on the dot he came off. And I'd even be surprised if sort of United were like, well, we didn't really intend on him to play that long, but look, we went 2-0 down. We had to keep him on because we needed to get goals and all that kind of stuff. So I think Martial starts at the Emirates and then maybe plays again 60 minutes and then Hojlund comes on. But who knows? I mean, They did say, didn't they, with this back injury, they were very much keen on pointing out it's not too much of a big deal, it's not that bad. It was only discovered during his medical, and it was less of an injury, more of just like a hot spot on his back, and it just needed to sort of be managed for a couple of weeks. It's not that bad at all. And those doctors that were putting stuff out there, they were saying, no, it's not true. And he has been on the grass for a while, hasn't he? He's been on the grass for... Well, he was on the grass really since the first sort of weekend of the season. We saw those sort of training pictures before that first game against Wolves. He was out there. He might have been out there even before that. So he's been out on the pitch for a while. He's now been with the team for nearly a week, training with the team for nearly a week. So it's possible he could start. It's possible he could start. It's not theoretically impossible, but I think most likely, I think most likely he would. He'll probably be on the bench, particularly as well. Arsenal away. That is a tough place to throw a 20-year-old in your Manchester United debut. Arsenal away at the Emirates. Arsenal as well with a point to prove because they drew their last game, and we'll get into this a lot more when we have all of the preview stuff dropping. But Arsenal are in a strange situation at the moment, aren't they? Because Arteta's tinkering. He's doing all this weird experiment, playing Thomas Partey at right back. And I think there is a sort of general feeling that Sunday, Arteta will be like, let's just go back to what we were doing before. And if they go back to what they're doing before, we know how rampant they can be. We know how, they'll be up for it. They'll be flying. And as I said before, and I don't know whether Arsenal would do this. I know it's something that I would do, and you can say, it's terrible, Owen, but sometimes that's how football works. If I was Saliba or whoever's playing at centre-back for Arsenal, even if I was a midfielder, I'm not sure there's a lot of bite in that midfield with Rice, Odegaard, and Havertz, but if I was one of them or a defender, first couple of minutes, you'd put something on Rasmus Hojlund if he started, wouldn't you? Welcome to the Premier League, through the back of him. Or whatever. So I think he comes off the bench, honestly, and I think the refusing to disclose stuff, to me, I think that's just mind games. I think Martial will start, but it's certainly really good and positive to have those options because we just haven't had those kind of options for such a long time. I mean, any strikers, let alone 2. And I think moving forward this season, it must be pointed out too. Moving forward, I think Hojlund's the starter. I do, because I don't think Martial can keep up that kind of schedule. I mean, historically, he just can't do it, not at all. So I think Hojlund would be the starter, and I think Martial's the option off the bench. But and I think that helps Martial too, because it eases the burden and the strain on him. Because let's face it, like it or not, folks, we've got to get through another season with Anthony Martial. And he'll get injured again at some point this season. It's inevitable. I mean, I would be stunned if I'm sitting here come the end of the season and I went, Martial didn't miss any more games. that was incredible. That was nuts. So I think that Hojlund will be a more regular starter, and Martial will be that bench option to try and manage his fitness. But I don't think he starts at the weekend. I don't. Lil Yo with the super chat says, how much is Ted and Mengi adding to the war kitty? I mean, he's going to Luton, isn't he? I saw that. And I really hope, by the way, for Mengi, I do really hope it works out for him, because he was being touted as like a future star. I mean, how often have we heard it? You know, him, Twanzebe, whoever. But and I think Twanzebe was also on trial or something like that with Luton. I saw that too. But I hope it really works out. But yes, the war kitty, KG's war kitty. Where is, I mean... KG, man, this is what we kept trying to say to him. You know, he kept saying that there's a walk. Trust me, we're going to come out and end of the window, we're going to spend 40, 50 million on a player. Trust me, there's a war kitty. They've got money. I know they've got money. They're going to spend money. KG, man, we're doing loans at this point. KG, that comedian. KG, that accountant. KG, the agent. I mean, there's so many different ways you can go with that. KG, the accountant, is a funny one as well. With big glasses on. His little abacus, his calculator, all that kind of stuff. Glenny Boy says, because Rasmus Hojlund be our new number 11. I think he's going to be number 17. I mean, Fabrizio Romano had said that previously, that the moment that Fred was sold, that's what Hojlund's number was going to be. He was 17 at Atalanta, I believe he was as well. Aaron says KG the fraud. If he was saying Thursday. Sometimes I think I take a step back and think about that. Remind yourself of the takeover, how crazy that takeover thing is, and it goes back to those people, and how you sort of digest information nowadays, or you get your news wherever it may be. Is that when was that, June? With the whole, the 9-2 Foundation incorporated company. They've incorporated a company in the UK, Reuters. But it's Reuters. Reuters are coming out and saying that it's imminent, there's exclusivity. So it's true. I'm telling you it's true. And then you had some other journalists go, well, according to my sources, nothing's really happening. It's kind of the same. You don't know what you're talking about, you idiot. Here we are. Nearly in the start of September. It's the 31st of August today. We are no closer. So those people, it's a bit like about that, and that's what the KG Thursday was about. I was doing that stream with him that week when Rio was on the platform. I'm hearing this is gonna be good. This is gonna happen right now, and KG said, I think Thursday. I don't know how many Thursdays it's been since then. I mean, if someone wants to go and figure that out as to how many Thursdays it's been since KG said Thursday, I mean, all of the false alarms as well. People, remember before those Twitter accounts, which thankfully have gone a bit sort of more silent now. I think people have started to sort of see through the bullshit when it comes through those Twitter accounts of the 9-2 Foundation. It's going to be announced probably today or in the next couple of days. And then nothing happens. And then they did that so many times. And even I think now finally people are like, that's not true anymore. That's not going to happen. Brian says, so today's deadline day. It is not. Tomorrow is deadline day. The deadline is September 1st at 11 p.m. So it's Friday at 11. Obviously, tomorrow we'll have full coverage of everything. We'll have full coverage of anything that breaks, of course, today as well. But tomorrow we're going to have a big deadline day. Big deadline day, streams, shows. Obviously, we'll be live when the window is shutting as well. It's kind of UV tradition at this point, isn't it, to be live when the window shuts for like a mammoth 2-hour plus stream. So we'll be covering that. There's so much to cover as well over the next few days, just in general. Obviously, later on today, as I mentioned, 5 p.m. Champions League draw. Flex and myself are going to be live covering that. In addition to that, there's a whole bunch of sort of Arsenal content that's going to be going up in the build-up to Sunday's game. We're going to have previews, tactical previews, fan clashes, you name it. They're all going to be there. So if you haven't already, subscribe. Bottom right-hand corner. You don't want to miss a single thing. We're only 70. You can see them top right-hand corner there. 70 subscribers away from 151,000. So if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe. So that's the latest when it comes to Hojlund. Let me check on the poll, actually, before I move on to the next topic, which was, will Man United qualify for the Champions League next season? Over 600 votes in 11 minutes. And it's close. It's close. 55% of you say yes, 45% say no, which is quite interesting, actually, that. I would say now, if you ask me, I would say yes. I do think we qualify for the Champions League next season. One, is because I'm trying to be optimistic and positive. Two, there's more spots. I mean, just maths. There's more spots, so we've got a chance. We do. And I do think, in comparison to sort of the clubs around us at the moment, it is close. I do think it's fairly close in terms of our performances in comparison to others. So, and what we're going to see is, for instance, Chelsea. People talking about Chelsea and their spending. Well, they went away to lost to West Ham as well. So I think we're still going to see, I think what we saw last season is those sort of bigger traditional top 6, top 4 teams are still going to drop points. Nobody is close to Man City still at this point. They're not. Nobody is anywhere near. City are going to win the league again. Arsenal, I don't even think Arsenal are going to put up the challenge they did to City last season. Remember Arsenal, the start of the season Arsenal had last season, they were flying. I mean, they had one of the best starts ever, didn't they, last season? I'm not sure it's the best. I think Liverpool had like the best start to a season when they won the league. The point being is, I don't even know if they're going to do that. So it is still going to be, can you be the best of sort of an inconsistent and bad bunch? So I still do think United will scrape it. I'm going to maybe say 4th or that 5th, that wild card, and then maybe, again, a bit of hope, maybe. So that's my thoughts on it. Speaking of the Champions League as well, let's move on. Just to give a bit of an update about the Champions League. So once again, it's actually going to be at 5 o'clock British Summer Time. It's in Monaco. We'll be live for it as well. And just for who potentially we could get, we'll go into this a bit more a bit later on. Obviously, this is the final Champions League under the current format, with 2 of the each 4-team groups going into the last 16 knockout phase. You know what's funny actually with changes? I was about to say this is, I don't like the way that things are, the new Champions League format. But sometimes you do have to realise that football does evolve and football does change. The European Cup, Champions League, whatever you want to call it, has changed a lot. I mean, back in the day, it used to just be a straight knockout tournament. The champions from all across Europe face off against each other. I remember when I was younger, there was the 2-group format, whereby, you qualified out of your group, and then you went into another group. I remember before where there was only 4 groups previously. So football does change and football does evolve. I do look at the current system and say, well, I don't think it's particularly broken, so I'm not sure why you're trying to fix it. But we know why they're trying to fix something that isn't broken. Money! Money, yes, because they're adding in, was it 4 more teams? That's what they're going in for. It's purely money, match day revenue, broadcast revenue. It's the effect of the Super League. It's the pressure of the Super League. Because why did they do the Super League in the first place? Because clubs weren't happy with the money they were making from the Champions League. They thought they could make more. So that's why. But football does change. Football does evolve. So obviously this is the last Champions League under the current format, with those 2 of the 4-team groups going into the last 16 knockout phase. As I mentioned, from next season, there's going to be 36 teams, up from 32. And all of them are going to be playing 8 matches instead of 6 against 8 different opponents, instead of playing the same 3 opponents twice. So that home and away thing is not happening anymore. You're playing more games. You just cut them in half, basically. You play 8 opponents, 8 different opponents, 4 of them at home, 4 of them away. as opposed to that sort of group phase, which again is going to be weird, certainly, isn't it? And also, all of those 36 sides are going to be ranked in one league table, and the top 8 will go straight into the last 16, with the teams ranked 9th to 24 facing 2-leg playoffs to join them. So, I tell you what, that team that finishes top of that league table, could you imagine sort of the flex that they're going to have? Oh, I was top of that. I was top of the overall Champions League table. And realistically, you could have a team, so in that league phase, you could have a team that finishes 24th out of those sides win the Champions League. Very, very odd. And we'll see it in practice next season to see if it works, certainly. Nevertheless, the pots for today, that's what we're talking about here, that United are going to be involved in. We're not in pot 1, we're in pot 2. So pot 1 is Manchester City, Sevilla, Barcelona, Napoli, Bayern, Paris Saint-Germain, Benfica, and Feyenoord, aka the winners. They won their European leagues, or they won, obviously, the Europa League in the case of Sevilla. Pot 2, you have the likes of Real Madrid, Manchester United, Inter Milan, Borussia Dortmund, Atletico Madrid, RB Leipzig, Porto, and Arsenal. Pot 3, Shakhtar Donetsk, Salzburg, Milan, Braga, PSV Eindhoven, Lazio, Red Star Belgrade, FC Copenhagen. And then pot 4, you've got Young Boys, Real Sociedad, Galatasaray, Celtic, Newcastle United. So they're going to most likely get a really tough group. Union Berlin, Royal Antwerp, and RC Lens. So let's do a what's the best group we can get, and what's the worst group that we can get. Now, the worst group we can probably get, if you're looking in pot 1, which is the team you don't want to get. I mean, you're probably looking at Barca or Bayern. Well, we beat Barca last year. You know, we didn't lose to them as well. We drew against them at the new camp, and we beat them at Old Trafford. So even if we got them, you go, tell you what, we could give them a go. Someone says Sevilla. Oh, man.
Fucking reckless! That's fucking reckless!
Only gonna give me yellow.
Imagine we have to go away to Sevilla again.
Bloody hell!
You just brought it back up. Can you imagine? It'll be, okay, Sevilla, they're in Group C. And the second team, Manchester United. Ooh. Do you know what, though? I want them again. I want them again. Bring Sevilla.
What?
Bring him.
What?
We'll beat him at Old Trafford.
What?
We'll beat him away from home.
What?
We'll do it. Because they're not what they were. They're not what they were last season. They've sold all their players. Bring them. Exercise the demons. We'll probably lose.
Bloody hell!
Realistically, the sort of the worst pattern is, I mean, Sevilla's part of that, actually. Here's one. Out of Sevilla or Barcelona, who would you rather have? I'd rather have Barcelona, that is wild, isn't it? And I think people will actually agree with that. Who would you rather have if it was pot 1, Sevilla or Barcelona? Barcelona. Yeah, I think legitimately people will be like, "Well, still get Barca. Get Barca. We'll do that job. You know, we can do it. We played well in the new camp last year. Played well at Old Trafford. We know psychologically we can beat them. We know we can." I probably would take Barca, honestly. You know? Ah, man. But okay. So the worst group, the worst possible, maybe Sevilla in there. He made Bayern Munich, Harry Kane, although we saw them play in that Super Cup. They're terrible, but they have played quite well since then. Obviously, we'd be in pot 2. Pot 3, the teams we want to avoid. I mean, maybe AC Milan. You're looking at that, maybe. I think the rest of the teams, you look at United, say you should be doing a decent job against them. And then pot 4, we played Lens at Old Trafford. Obviously, they're not the same Lens from last season, but they're still decent. Real Sociedad, don't want to play them again. Ugh. Real Sociedad, honestly, don't want that. No chance. Don't want that. As far as the easiest the easiest sort of group out of that. Everyone will want to see Feyenoord. No disrespect. No, everyone wants to see Feyenoord come out of that pot 1 and then be drawn with them. So I think the best group you can get is like Feyenoord. What? Copenhagen, maybe. Or Salzburg. And then someone like Royal Antwerp. I don't want to play Young Boys again. Remember we lost. we lost against Young Boys. Last time we played them in the Champions League was Ollie's last season. That's where the famous flex of Flex and KG doing the watch along. I think it's like the first watch along in the studio, and KG's going, "It's not over, Flex," and KG going, "It is over. It is. Don't worry, it's over. It's over." And then they score. Jesse Lingard passes the ball back. Flex, for fuck's sake! Oh. I don't want to play them again. I really don't. Oh, that was terrible. Oh, yeah, not a chance. Oh, yeah. Lilio says, no, we last played Young Boys was under Ranić 1-1. Yeah, we did, but that was part of that season. We drew 1-1 because we were already through at that point. So Ranić played all of the kids, and we drew that game. But that in the that was in the same group stage as the Ollie one. That was the first game of the group stage. It was I remember that one vividly. Yes, not good. But you don't want to play like Red Star Belgrade because that is a tough stadium to go to. Really, really tough to go to. But we'll go into that in more detail later on. Obviously, like I said, we are going to be... EB says add it to the Clips channel. It's on there. It's on there. It's on the Clips channel. And if you haven't, go to the Clips channel. The link's in the video description. Subscribe because that clip is on there. That clip's there. There's plenty of clips already being uploaded every day of all kind of stuff, all kind of magic moments in the history of United View, which that is one of them as well. So you can subscribe there and check them all out. Let me check the super chats. I've closed that poll. Let's have a look at the super chats, see if I'm caught up as well. CJK Digital says, I can see a rebrand of the Champions League with Saudi teams. Well, there is that rumour, isn't there? There is that rumour that possibly there could be like a Saudi wild card thrown in for... there could be a Saudi wild card thrown in for one of the Saudi teams possibly getting involved in the Champions League. I don't know if that would be from next season or when they would try and do that, or if they would just try and add in 4 of them and add in a ton of money. I mean, it's not even necessarily, well, obviously it's the money part of it, but it's also another big aspect of that is UEFA will probably look at it and say, you know, this is the first Champions League season ever, well, in a really, 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 really long time that has none of the following players. No Ronaldo, no Messi, no Benzema, no Neymar. That they are 4 massive players not to be involved in the Champions League. And I think they probably are going to be curious of, what does that look like for our sort of, you know, our television ratings? What does that look like for these big knockout games? What does that look like for when Real Madrid's playing this team and Benzema isn't playing, or when PSG's playing this team and Messi isn't playing? Well, again, what does that look like? So I do think that is something to be aware of, because I think they might look at it. I think they do. I mean, they already have their own Champions League. They're in the Asian Champions League, which I believe is ongoing right now. So it'd be interesting to see just what that confederation would say about it. Of, we're not leaving our Champions League. What, to go to the European one? You can't do that, can you? you can't do that. Surely not. So keep an eye out for that one, certainly. I mean, there were even rumours, wasn't there, about them going, we want to try and include the USA in it. I thought, let's not take the piss here. I mean, I've got to get that on the soundboard. I keep saying that every day at the moment, but with Messi, I guess. Finally, speaking of draws, we've got the Carabao Cup 3rd round draw. That took place last night. And Manchester United have got another home tie. Yes, another home tie against Crystal Palace. Now, that's not going to be easy. That's not going to be easy at all. Palace, good side, Roy Hodgson, gonna make it difficult, but at the same time, home draw again. if I was a rival fan, I'd be like, man, United getting all these home draws. What's going on with this? What's going on with all of these home draws? I'm glad, because if it was the other way around, I'd be like, I don't know about that. Our away record, we drew away against Palace last year. Should have won, but we drew away. I'd be like, I don't know. Home draw. This is defense of the Carabao Cup for Erik ten Hag and Manchester United. So here's hoping, certainly, that we can successfully defend it. And it looks like Dean Henderson most likely going to be in goal for that game. I mean, if we get Cucurella, most likely I guess he'd be cup tied, I'm assuming. So he might not be involved in that, which again is a bit of a disgrace and a cheat. Screw Chelsea if that's the case, but fine, whatever. But there you go, guys. That's the latest Manchester United transfer news. As I said, we'll be back later on at 5 p.m. for the Champions League draw, Flex and myself. But let's face it, most likely I will be back at some point today prior to then, because transfers, we've got 2 days left. 2 days left to sign Amrabat and sign Cucurella. Cucurella looks like it's going to happen. The backup goalkeeper is going to be announced too. And who knows? So if anything happens before then, of course, I'll be back here. So be sure to smash a like on the like button. Be sure to subscribe, bottom right-hand corner. And who knows? Hopefully, I'll speak to you again very soon. Peace.